Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little and I want to thank you for being here for my Thanksgiving Day Marathon. For the next 24 hours, I'm going to be giving you a preview to the exclusive content that I have at pokercoaching.com. I have worked, for the last 15 years as a poker coach, author, and I have taken all of my knowledge and put it into pokercoaching.com. So over there I have over 110 classes that go through very, very specific scenarios that my students have asked me about over the last few years. Also, I've hired many of the best poker players in the world to create content for you. Really, there's something for everyone at pokercoaching.com. We have somewhat basic content all the way up to very, very advanced content. I'm in the fortunate spot of being able to essentially hire people to coach Jonathan Little like I wished I was coached when I first started playing poker, and also I hire the best players in the world to essentially coach me as I want to be coached today. And that is all there for you at pokercoaching.com. So we're going to be giving you a look at everything that is available at the pokercoaching.com if you have full access to the site over the next 24 hours here on this marathon. If you want to check out pokercoaching.com at a very discounted price, we have a Black Friday sale happening now. The links are live. You can click the links right here below the video or go to pokercoaching.com/Black Friday. I'm excited about this marathon. I've been planning it for quite a while. And look, I just want to get the material in your hands that will help you improve your poker skills, because that will also help you improve your lives. So get to it, get to work. I hope you enjoy this marathon, and I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for pokercoaching.com, and today we are going to be going through a pile of hands from the £1 million buy-in event that Triton put on recently in London. It's the biggest buy-in poker tournament ever, so I might as well take a look. So first hand we have Tom Dwan raises, pocket queens from the button. Vivek Rajkumar 3-bets small blind to 35k. So notice we are very deep stacked here. We're playing 1,500, 3,000. So we're playing 300 big blinds deep. So that means this is a spot where Vivek should be 3-betting quite large from the small blind, as he does. And now Elton Tang 4-bets to 100k. All right, back around to Tom Dwan. Let's see what he does. This seems like a spot where if we were shallower, we'd probably just be finding ourselves all in. Like, say we had 400k, 500k, something like that. But notice that we are playing roughly $1 million deep. This is very early in the tournament. To be fair, Elton is 725, so 825 to start, I believe. It's a little bit too deep just to jam, because if you jam and get called, you're going to be pretty unhappy with pocket queens. Notice when you have queens, you don't block aces or kings at all, so you don't want to be in for that reason. But queens is too good to fold here, I think. So what are the options? We could 4-bet small and then what? Call it off? Seems aggressive. We could 4-bet and then fold. Also seems kind of nitty. So in position on the button, I think calling's probably going to be the best course of action. And that is what Tom does. Again, that's a very abnormal spot because we are so incredibly deep. Now around to Vivek, 65k into a 300k pot. Probably to splash around. Because in this scenario, the 8-7 suited is going to flop well enough. Yes, you expect to be against two really strong ranges, but if you get a gen flop where you get 2 pair, straight, nut draw, whatever, that's usually going to be great because here Vivek's in the small blind. He can check flop. One of the two opponents is going to bet, then he can check jam. So I like the call. Oh boy. That's interesting because here, like if Vivek had a little bit more equity with his draw, I think he may just be happy to get it in. But on this board, it's so easy for Tom Dwan to have a set, right? If he had jacks or nines, he would likely play it this way. This is a rather abnormal scenario where I'm not exactly sure what the right play is. Notice Vivek did check pretty much immediately. I think Elton does just need to give up on this board. It's pretty easy for either opponent to have a very, very strong hand. And now should Tom bet? Kind of a weird spot, right? Because notice here, if Tom bets and gets called or raised, he has to be pretty unhappy. It's It's an interesting spot, though, because Tom really should have some jacks in his range that are just like never, ever, ever folding. So I think it's a spot where Tom can bet here for protection / value. Mostly protection, really, because notice he doesn't really want any high card to come off. So I think it's probably okay to bet small. Pot's 300K. It's probably okay to bet something like 150 in this spot. You can get called by some worse hands. Also, you just make stuff like ace-king fold. Obviously, aces or kings may put you in a rough spot, but I think betting's okay. Checking's also fine, too, though. Don't get me wrong. I think checking is acceptable, and he does go for a check. And the reason checking's acceptable, because if you bet and you face aggression, you're going to be pretty unhappy. Like right here, if he did bet, I bet Vivek would have strongly considered jamming, especially if Tom did bet that 200K size, 250K size, something like that. But definitely a weird spot, right? To be fair, I'm not the most well-versed in 300 big blind deep poker and 4-bet pots. So anyway, check this time. Turn is 4 of diamonds, giving Vivek a flush, and Tom an overpair of flush draw, and Elton the nut flush draw. It's pretty bizarre. Definitely a spot where Vivek should be betting, because if it checks through again, that's just awful for him, because anyone with a diamond realizes their equity easily. Also, if a diamond comes off, that's going to make it hard for Vivek to get paid. So I'd bet here. I'd also bet kind of big, maybe 200K, 250K, because here, if someone does have an ace of diamonds or king of diamonds, they're going to call a lot of bets, and you don't really mind pricing them out, especially given the pot is quite large already. So I like a pretty big bet here, like 250. He does bet 210, so pretty sizable bet. Now should Elton call or jam? He's certainly not folding, I would not presume. Nut flush draw here is quite strong with overcards. That said, this is a spot where I guess Vivek should have a lot of sets, right? This is just such a bizarre scenario. With ace of diamonds, I think you need to stick around. Notice he has to put in 200 to try to win 7. So at this point, he's getting almost the right break-even pot odds if no more money goes in the pot. Also, you can kind of assume your ace or king is good every once in a while. Sometimes Vivek's just going to have like ace and then king of diamonds, right? And you're just crushing him. Sometimes Vivek's going to have a set, and he's going to be in a pretty rough spot if a diamond comes. So I think you just need to peel here. If he calls, I actually think Tom should fold, because now queen of diamonds is likely not good, and queens are often not good. So if Elton calls, I think Tom should fold. If Elton folds, which I think would be kind of nitty, I think Tom should call. Because then the queen of diamonds just becomes a much better hand, and the pocket queens is going to be good every once in a while. The neat thing about having pocket queens here is that your draw or your made hand are going to be good a lot of the time. Whereas with ace king, your draw is always good, but your made hand's like almost never good, right? So it's much easier to play the ace king here because you just call and try to get there on the river. But he does make the fold. Snug fold. Kind of surprised to see that. Now Tom, I just think, cannot fold here. Because now that, like I said, now that one opponent folded, either the queen is good for Tom, or either the diamond is good for Tom, or he just has the best hand already. Tough part is that Vivek may jam river with some bluffs, like say he has ace of diamonds, right? He may jam river and then make Tom fold, which would be pretty brutal. So, using time bank chip. One nice thing about these 30-second shot clocks is that you would think hands don't take too long. We're already 6.5 minutes into this one, though, so maybe they do take quite a while. For those who don't know, Vivek is a sit-and-go legend. I used to play tons of sit-and-goes with him back in the day. His name was Psyduck on the internet. I think. Is that right? Sounds right. Vivek went off and got rich while the rest of us were busy playing poker tournaments. Tom Dwan, you probably all know Tom Dwan. Very good, strong, loose, aggressive player. I have no idea what he's been up to beyond being in Macau for the last 5, 6, 10 years. Winning all the money, presumably. All right, on the river, should Vivek bet? I think he definitely should, because notice if Tom has ace-king here, he's probably just going to check it behind on the river. And if he does check and Tom bets, Vivek can't even get a check raise in. So this is a spot where I think Vivek definitely needs to bet. He can't expect to get called by a pair of kings or queens, or like queen jack with a queen of diamonds if Tom somehow has it. So I like a bet. Pot's 723. So you're trying to get called by ace king. So how much can ace king, maybe ace queen, realistically call? Notice they both have about pot size bet left. I think something like 300k is nice. Maybe all in. One of the two. Really depends on how much of a calling station Tom is and how lag Tom expects Vivek to be. I know they're both friends. I don't know if that matters at all. But this is a pretty dicey spot for both players. It's fun to get a very, very rough deep hand, right? Rough deep stacked hand right off the bat. But that is what we have. So I think Tom just cannot really call here. Vivek may even value bet ace king if he has it. Like the interesting thing is like neither player has ace king here, but they are definitely concerned about the ace and the king. So this would be a very aggressive call, I think, from Tom, unless Vivek's just insane. And I don't know Vivek to be insane, so I think you have to fold it here. At this point, it's just so easy for Vivek to have pocket jacks, pocket nines, a flush, and even ace king that all those may value bet. Now, if you think that Vivek would always check river because he fears Tom betting, I'm sorry, he would always check river because he thinks Tom's going to bluff a lot, then it's a spot where when Vivek does bet, maybe he has more bluffs in his range. Like say Tom thought Vivek would always check some flushes and some sets. Then when he does bet, it makes him more bluff heavy, right? Also notice his bet size. His bet size is kind of big. 350 is like half pot, a lot of Tom's stack. Tom's probably thinking here, maybe he's making this bet with a strong but non-nut hand, perhaps looking to fold to a jam, which would be insane. But it may happen every once in a while. Because notice here, if Tom jams, what can Vivek really call with, right? I mean, it definitely would be a really, really, really rough spot. And remember, this is very, very early into this £1,000,000 buy-in tournament. No one's trying to give it away. Anyway, come on, Tom. Let's fold. Seems like a fold spot. But you never know. Never know with Tom. He's burning all of his time chips right off the bat, though. I'm very shocked he's just burning all of his time chips. This seems quite unnecessary to me, but maybe he's trying to get some sort of read on Vivek. Maybe he assumes Vivek's going to do something at some point. I don't know. I don't know what's going on right off the bat. I'm reading the YouTube chat randomly, saying putting Vivek on something like King Jack with King of Diamonds. Like, would he turn that into a bluff? Maybe. Not sure. I would presume not. Vivek would have to think his hand's actually good every once in a while. Maybe he does turn into a bluff, though. I don't know. All right, Tom finally lets it go. Let's move on to another hand. All right, here we have another hand at a different table featuring Sam Greenwood and I believe Nick Petrangelo. Two very, very good players, two of the absolute best in the world. So, Sam Greenwood has pocket jacks in the hijack seat. Definitely an easy open. Notice he's already lost some chips. When you do lose chips early in the tournament, realize that is okay. You're not going to win every hand you play. Even if it is the biggest buy-in tournament of your life, just show up and play well. Vogelsang showed up without the scarf. That's fun to see. He's known for wearing a ridiculous face guard device. Maybe they told him if you play, you can't wear the face guard device. All right. Danny Tang, I don't know anything about him. He flats the button. Seems perfectly fine. Around to Nick Petrangelo. He always seems to have the aces. I don't know how he always has aces. Every time I played a big pot with him, he shows me like quads or boat. Maybe there's something to that. Just show up with the nuts. So Nick should definitely 3-bet big blind, I presume. I would be shocked if he does anything else. I'd probably make it something like 40k in this spot, give or take. Wait, what? 110? All right. Definitely wasn't expecting 110. Sam made it 9,500. Nick blasted. Oh my God, what would I do with jacks here? Notice that he's put Greenwood in an awful spot. He's essentially forced Greenwood to not have good implied odds with anything. That's amazing. He's like, here, take these time banks, please. They're probably sitting here thinking, well, look, I get the reason why Petrangelo would want to do this. He wants to really cut off implied odds, right, from out of position. The problem, though, is that when you make it gigantic like this, everything should just fold. Greenwood does decide to call with jacks, though. I think, like, here, Greenwood's supposed to call with maybe kings, queens, jacks, tens. Now around to Danny Tang. I mean, I guess you're supposed to set mine. It's pretty insane, right? But I think you actually are supposed to set mine in position here with pocket threes. But he lets it go. And certainly I don't fault him for letting go of the pocket threes to the gigantic re-raise. All right, sure. Now, Greenwood really doesn't want to see a low flop, that's for sure. Because if Greenwood sees a low flop, he's out. Flop comes queen 8-7. Look, I'm going to throw this out there, by the way. I don't know if this could ever be the case, but when people make an absurdly big re-raise, very often it is because they get excited and they make a mistake. Now, I'm not going to say that's what Petrangelo did here. Maybe this is just good GTO poker in his mind. But when people get excited, they do silly things. Maybe he meant to grab 55K here, right? I could certainly be convinced of that. Maybe he's excited because this is the biggest tournament in his life and he has the aces. Usually when people make a gigantic misclick, and anyway, very often you see people make it too little, but whenever you do see people make a misclick, quite often it is a sign of extreme strength. So now flop comes 8-7, queen 8-7, and Petrangelo bets small, 60K, which I think is actually pretty sweet. It's a spot where you have a gigantic range advantage, you would presume. And he does bet 60, and I think Greenwood does just have to call. What else are you going to do, right? You're essentially praying to get there. Turns and another queen. This might actually save Greenwood because now Petrangelo can't just put all of his money in the pot. I wouldn't think because Greenwood could conceivably have some queens. I think Petrangelo should either check or bet small here again, just betting small with the whole range. Kind of a weird spot, though, because now Petrangelo probably doesn't have a whole lot of queens, but who knows. This is a weird spot because whenever you're analyzing scenarios that you've literally never been in your whole life, poker gets weird, which is fun. It's good when poker gets weird. I don't see how Sam can really fold as long as Nick doesn't bet too big. He doesn't bet too big again. This is such a brutal spot for Sam to be in. If I was in Sam's shoes, I think I would have just folded this pre-flop and recognize every once in a while he's just really going to get you. But you can't fold flop for a tiny bet. You can't fold turn for tiny bet. Are you supposed to fold the river if he bets? This is a spot where I think Petrangelo's in a neat spot going to the river because he has 3/4 pot behind. It's another pretty awful turn for Petrangelo because now he loses to jacks, right? I'm sorry, tens. So he loses to any queen, pocket eights, pocket sevens, nines will probably fold to a bet, jacks will probably fold to a bet. He loses to pocket tens. So he's only beating kings here, which is kind of neat, right? So if Petrangelo checks, should Greenwood ever turn his hand into a bluff to try to get aces or kings to fold? I mean, I guess not, just because Greenwood has showdown value against ace-king, which, you know, who knows if that's actually in Petrangelo's range or not. Definitely a weird spot, though, and I have no idea what the right strategy is. It goes check, check. Greenwood's probably thinking, thank God I got out of this game without losing all my money. And, I hope we have a lot more bizarre hands like that because my analysis is going to be definitely on the fly in that scenario. I have never been in that situation in my whole life. All right, let's fast forward a little bit. We see Vogelsang with Queen 9 suited opening it up. Perfectly fine, perfectly standard. Queen 9 suited is a very strong hand that you can open for most positions. The good, kind of connected big suited hands are pretty good to raise from all spots. You have to realize you just don't have them all that often, so it's fine to open them when you do get them. Jungleman, Dan Cates in the big blind with pocket tens likes to defend, which I like. You don't really want to be doing a whole lot of 3-betting from the big blind against early position raisers just because they're going to flop decently well a lot of the time. Flop comes Jack 10-4. We may see fireworks here. Guess they still let him wear sunglasses. Definitely a spot for Cates to check, and Vogelsang will probably continuation bet. You have to think he's going to bet with his best hands in his draws. And it looks like he is going to make a bet. Bets 11K. Essentially a sign he's betting with his whole range in this scenario. I would presume Cates is going to raise, unless he knows Vogelsang. Well, looks like he's getting a call. I would presume that this is a pretty nice spot to raise, because here, unless you know Vogelsang is particularly aggressive, you have to assume that he's going to check it behind on the turn with a lot of marginal made hands. Now, when you do have middle set, neat thing about middle set is you block a lot of marginal made hands, right? Very different than bottom set, because when you have bottom set, you don't block strong made hands or marginal made hands. But with pocket tens, you block ace 10, queen 10, king 10, 10, 9, right? All these hands may decide to check behind on the turn. So that means when Vogelsang bets, he's more likely to bet the turn in this scenario, because he's more likely to have either a draw or a strong made hand, right? You have to think a jack or better will keep betting on the turn. And if he just has garbage, maybe he'll even bluff it. That said, I still probably just check raise tens in this scenario, because when you check raise here, especially against a tiny bet, if Vogelsang has any equity at all, he just cannot fold, really, because he's in position and we're very deep stacked. Notice we're playing 850k deep. So I'm kind of surprised Cates did not just raise, but middle set is an okay hand to slow play from out of position on big card boards like this, especially on big card boards like this. So check call. I presume Cates is going to check and then probably check raise turn, unless he thinks, again, Vogelsang's just especially maniacal on the river. Like, if you knew here Vogelsang would always fold to a turn check raise, or usually fold to a turn check raise, then you definitely want to check call, just pray bluffs river. But check raising turn seems perfectly fine to me as well. Especially if you are a good, strong GTO type player like Daniel Cates, where if you check turn, Vogelsang will bet sometimes, and you can put in the check raise, and Vogelsang's not going to think that Cates only has the nuts when he check raises. That makes this turn check raise fine. Most people, though, when they check raise the turn, they just have the nuts every time. We see Cates has the nuts here, the effective nuts, and I just have to presume he's going to raise. Versus a big bet. Fun spot to make a big bet. I have to presume he's still going to raise. That said, yeah. I would raise every time in this scenario. What I was essentially trying to say is that if your opponent knows you only check raise the turn with the nuts, you really don't want to be check raising the turn with only the nuts, right? You want to be check raising it with a lot of bluffs. But that's not the case here, because Vogelsang and Cates and all the players in the tournament are pretty good and definitely capable. One neat thing about the recreational players in this tournament compared to recreational players in other tournaments is that in the high buy-in recreational players are often playing with the idea that they're going to try to put you in a terrible spot. Like, that is what they like doing. So if they like doing that, then that means they're going to be bluffing sometimes, right? So you really don't need to be making heroic folds in very high buy-in events, at least in my experience. Anyway, now that Vogelsang bets big, it definitely polarizes his range, I would think, to either strong overpairs, good top pairs like ace-jack, and draws. So against that range, I think it probably does make sense to put in the raise, unless you think Vogelsang's raise is just really tilted towards draws that will also bluff the river. So Vogelsang bets 65, which I think is just good, solid size. I think Cates is probably going to go to about 3 times that, maybe 3.5 times that, given we're still very deep. So call it 200, 250, 225, somewhere in there. And he makes it 200. We nailed it one time. And now Vogelsang's in a pretty awful spot, because he has to put in 135 to win a pot that's going to be 525 or so. 550. So he needs to get there about 30% of the time, but he's only going to get there about 16% of the time. Every once in a while, not saying this is going to happen very often at all, but every once in a while, when he gets the king, he's going to lose to ace-queen, but I don't think that's going to happen pretty much ever. So I think it's actually not all that bad to call here, because if you get an 8, you're just getting paid. And if you get the king, you're probably getting paid. So I think this is a spot where Vogelsang's in a bad spot. It's not good at all. Notice that losing an extra 135k is kind of detrimental to a 787k stack. But I think I probably would have peeled there, but Vogelsang lets it go. It is worth mentioning that I think maybe Cates should have made it a tiny bit bigger, Because if he makes it like 225 there, then hands like Queen 9 really do need to fold. But that said, the 200 got it done. So maybe just slightly smaller sizing than I would have done in that scenario is ideal. All right. I do want to make it clear that as we move forward, I'm presuming a lot of these players are better than me at poker because they're playing £1 million tournament, especially the pros. This tournament was set up where each pro got to, call it invite, each recreational player got to invite a pro. So the field was, in theory, 50% pros, 50% amateurs. That said, some of the amateurs, recreational players, whatever you want to call them, they were actually very clearly very strong players. And all the pros were good. So we must make the assumption here that the opponents play very, 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 very perfectly. So this is as much of a learning experience for me as it is for all you. So anyway, here, we have a raise from Sam Trickett from the cutoff. Binger, I think that's how you say his name. He 3-bets to 72K in the small blind. Again, notice, very, very big 3-bet sizings in general across the board. That is just good, fundamentally sound poker when you're playing, at this point, 100, 125, 130 big blinds deep. When you're even deeper, you should make it even bigger. Anyway, he 3-bets to 72K. Trickett can either call or 4-bet. Really just want to ask, am I happy getting it all in for my whole stack? And cutoff versus good, loose, aggressive, small blind player. I say loose, aggressive. I don't know he's loose, aggressive. I'm making that presumption. Against good player, I think you just have to be happy 4-betting and getting it in. Trickett does 4-bet to 160. Now, does Binger get it in? Same spot, right? Are you happy getting it in for 120 big blinds, cutoff versus small blind with queens? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, Sam Trickett's known to be very aggressive. He does quite maniacal plays. I'm not going to say randomly. I'm sure he has reasons, but it seems almost randomly where he just goes for it, right? He is not afraid. And against someone who goes for it and is not afraid, I am not opposed to just ripping it in with your good hands here. You could also flat and then just not fold on non-ace, non-king flops. Obviously, you may have to still call down on some king XX, like king 6-2, but on any ace XX, you can usually get away. Anyway, he jams. I think that's nice and standard. And now back to Trickett. I think this is a pretty easy call. I mean, you 4-bet this to call it off, I would presume. You now have to put in 600K to win a pot that's going to be 1.4 million. So do you think you're good here 40-something% of the time? Yeah, I would think so. We mentioned this earlier, but the nice thing about ace-king is that ace-king is very, very often not against aces or kings. And I think the only way you can really fold here, or at least 4-bet and then fold, is if you have the idea in your head that Binger is really straightforward, really tight aggressive, really just doesn't bluff. Now, I've played with Binger a time or two in Europe over the years, and he's just good, strong player. And against a good, strong player, I think he got a call. But Trickett makes the laydown. I think that's quite snug. And essentially you're 4-betting there with ace-king to fold, saying that you think Binger's never going to bluff all in, and also will not jam with queens or ace-king. Because if he's ever jamming queens or ace-king, or especially jacks, I don't think he's jamming jacks, but he may. If he's jamming these hands, then you are making a pretty big mistake by folding. But maybe he just assumes he's not. That said, he did, so probably makes it not such a good 4-bet with the idea of folding. If you're going to fold to a 5-bet there, I think you're much better off, against a good player at least, I think you're much better off just flatting in position and then playing from there. Because then you for sure keep Binger in with lots of bluffs, because pretty much every good player has 3-bet bluffs in the range, but they may not have a whole lot of 5-bet bluffs. All right. Let's see what we have here. We have Bryn Kenney in the cutoff. Spoiler alert, he took 2nd place. Nice job, congrats. I think they made a deal and he got more than the player who won. Nice job. He called it actually before the tournament. He said, I'm probably going to have more of my net worth in this tournament than any other player. I'm feeling good about this one. And he took 2nd and got most of the money. So good job. Bryn Kenney, by the way, is really tough to play against. He will put you in awful scenarios, and he can just kind of look and tell what to do. He will put you in some miserable spots, and there's a lot to that. I remember when I was coaching David Einhorn for the $1 Million tournament in Vegas last year, there's a spot where he tried to bluff Bryn Kenney on the river in a 100K tournament, his practice 100K tournament. And Bryn Kenney just kind of like looked at him. I think he like check called donk led all in on the river for like 2 times pot. And Bryn just kind of looked at him. He's like, oh, man. And then Bryn called with ace high, and it was good. Sometimes you can just tell, right? Anyway, Bryn's a sicko. He will do some fun stuff. He raises cutoff, big blind 3-bets. He calls in position. Notice here, big blind 3-bet bigger. I think 8 king 9 becomes a fold. But in this scenario, given Bryn was getting great odds, I think you just have to call with king 9 suited. If it was offsuit, you should probably fold. Flop comes jack 6-5. This is a spot where big blind should be checking some. Checking's fine. You could also just continuation bet frequently with all of your range, depending on how you're structuring your big blind 3-betting range. When you 3-bet small, in theory, your 3-betting range should be decently strong, but that may or may not be the case. So you bet 35K, so it's basically saying I think I have a very strong range advantage, and neither of us have any or much of these sets here. So, sure. Now over to Kenny. What do you do? At this point, he has to put in 35K to win 144K. So, with the gut shot, our backdoor gut shot, backdoor flush draw, and an overcard, I know it may seem a little bit splashy to stick around, but getting such good pot odds, I mean, he's getting 4 or 5 to 1 pot odds, right? In that scenario, he can very easily call. He could also raise here, though. This type of draw, 3-card draws to straights and flushes, is a really, really nice draw to raise, especially when it lacks showdown value. And I think this king 9 actually does. So I don't mind a decently large raise, like 120K or so. I think that's certainly viable. So either call or raise. And makes it 117. Sweet. And now notice here the ace king is in rough shape. For you poker coaching members, check out Alex Fitzgerald's videos. He very often discusses going through Flopzilla, right? Just seeing how much of your opponent's range will fold to a raise. And right here, if ace king will fold to a raise, you can probably justify raising almost any 2 cards on this flop, which really does show the power of just really leaning on your opponents. And this is the kind of thing that Bryn Kenney does. So he does bet. Ace king gives it some thought. Notice how bad of a spot this is for ace king, right? Put yourself in Soiza's shoes. Imagine he has pocket 7s. Are you really happy about this? It's like, not really. And imagine you had a worse hand, like ace 10. You're really unhappy, right? But if your opponent is going to be raising in these spots, it's really tough to defend because they're just going to keep barreling on the turn a lot of the time. And that puts you in a miserable spot. So against players like Bryn Kenney, I think you actually want to err towards the side of checking a lot more. Because when you check, now you can pretty easily check call here. You can also check call aces and kings, queens, jacks, etc. And now that's going to really make the idea that your opponent's going to try to run you over not such a big deal, because Bryn's not going to have anything very often on jack 6-5, and you can just check call down very easily with overpairs and top pairs. So against very good loose aggressive players, I highly suggest you develop a strategy of doing a whole lot of checking. Yes, that will let them realize their equity decently well in general, but a lot of players, like Bryn, like putting people in tough spots. At least that's my experience with him. And against someone like that, you should be somewhat inclined to let him apply aggression in a spot where you just know you're not going to get run over by the aggression. Here we have a doozy of a hand. I reviewed this one for YouTube recently. We'll go through it again. So what happened here is Stephen Chidwick raised jack 8 of clubs in the hijack seat. Perfectly fine. Again, like I said, queen 9 suited, fine. Jack 8 suited, fine. Sam Trickett just calls small blind with ace jack. He could certainly call or 3-bet. Either plays fine. Bryn Kenney likes to defend a lot in the blinds. He defends the 8-6 offsuit, which is fine given, I believe it was, I think, a 14K raise pre-flop. So not too big of a raise given there's a big blind ante. Flop comes 7-4-3, and now it goes check, check, check. Very surprised Chidwick did not bet the flop. In my mind, the only way you can be checking here as your default play is if you are just convinced Trickett and Kenney are going to blast off. Now, kind of mentioned earlier, Trickett takes aggressive lines. I also mentioned earlier, Bryn Kenney likes to fight for pots. So if there ever are 2 players who you would check behind in the spot against, I think these 2 are them. That said, I think I would just pretty much always bet in the spot. Maybe there's some game theory optimal principle where Chidwick's trying to check behind here 10% of the time or 5% of the time with flushes. If that's the case, maybe he just landed on this 5% of the time and he checked. But I would almost certainly bet if I was in his shoes. Maybe he really does think both these players are bonkers. It could be the case, right? So now Chidwick checks turn, makes top pair, not flush draw. It's a great hand to check. Because now if Trickett checks and he faces aggression, he can just very easily call, either bet. So that's a nice hand to check here. Also, it's a spot where Chidwick may start bluffing every once in a while if he has like queen 10 or something. Kenny checks with nothing. And now, another spot where I think Chidwick should definitely bet. I don't know why you'd want to check here unless you were just convinced your two opponents are going to go bonkers again. But you have to know that with a decent degree of certainty. And Chidwick is very, very well versed in GTO poker, I am sure. I've seen his videos. But at the same time, I bet he's just really trying to exploit both of his opponents very hard here. So, river comes with a 7. And now I think Trickett can just value bet. If you are going to bet here, you're trying to get called by a marginal made hand. So, a small bet makes logical sense, I think. Just in general, I think. Because when you're trying to get called by marginal stuff, when you're trying to get called by marginal stuff, you want to be betting small. And so I think 20K is fine. He goes 16K, all right? And now, Bryn Kenney, like I said, he enjoys making plays. He decides to go for it here with the 8-6, which actually I think makes a lot of sense. He has the 6 of clubs, so he blocks a straight flush. You don't have to worry about that slow played hand. And blocks a straight. Probably no one has a flush at this point, right? So this is a pretty sweet spot to go for it. Definitely not saying I would have gone for it here. But Bryn Kenney is not afraid, like I said. You know, one thing I've noticed about a lot of these very, very top players is they go for it a little bit more often than you would think. They just, if they have the opportunity, they try. And I think it's because people fold a little bit too often. And I've actually been trying that a little bit more recently, and I've made, like in my last 15 tournaments, I had 2 pretty great runs, like top 5% of the field runs. And I think there's something to generally being aggressive and taking the spots that come. That is how you win way more than your fair share of the pots. Sure, sometimes you're going to end up losing a lot of chips, but that is how you make deep runs. And then that way, whenever you do find yourself all in and flipping, it's not actually for all of your money. It's only half of your money. So Chidwick calls here with a flush, which I think is just fine. You definitely don't want to raise, because if you raise and get called, you're going to be pretty unhappy. And now back to Trickett, and he decides relatively quickly to jam it all in. And that's aggressive. The interesting thing about this hand is that he has the jack blocker, making it harder for anyone to have pocket jacks, or jack 7. He also has the ace of clubs blocker to make it to where no one has the ace high flush. Notice ace high flush is not the nut flush. The problem, though, is like, what value hands does he really want to raise? And I think the answer here is 6-5 of clubs, pocket jacks, pocket 7s. Maybe jack 7. Probably doesn't have any jack 7s pre-flop. So now we're looking at only 6-5 of clubs, pocket jacks, and pocket 7s. That is a whopping 5 combinations of hands. If he had pocket 4s or 3s, I actually don't think he needs to be raising in this spot. Because when he raises 4s or 3s, he may now only get called by like ace high flush and better. Maybe not even ace high flush. Ace high flush may fold here. So if ace high flush folds here, then he's probably only getting called by super nut hands. And notice there, we saw that Bryn Kenney had nothing, but notice Bryn Kenney could have just had it here. He could have just had the straight flush. He could have had a boat, and he's not going to fold. So Trickett's trying to get 2 people to fold. And like I said, Trickett makes some aggressive plays, especially in spots where I think he thinks it would be insane to bluff here. Given it would be insane to bluff here, maybe that makes it a pretty sweet bluff spot, right? So he does jam, and after a very, very long think, Chidwick ends up folding. And I think that's fine. You know, you really should not be getting bluffed here all that often. And this is a spot where Trickett certainly could have trapped 6-5 of clubs on the flop. Certainly could have checked it on the turn, just praying somebody puts money in the pot. And he would check shove it like this. Pocket 7s, probably bets the turn, right? If he had pocket jacks, maybe he checks jacks on the turn. So now we're down to 2 combinations, or how many combinations? We have 3 combinations of jacks and 1 combination of 6-5 suits. That's 4 hands. Notice Chidwick actually has a jack in his hand, right? So now there's only 1 combination of jacks and 1 combination of 6-5 suited. It's 2 combination of hands. It's not a lot. Whenever you can really discount the nut combinations in your opponent's range, And you know they're capable of bluffing. I'm telling you all, Trickett is capable of bluffing. I know we see this hand, but I've played him a decent amount, and he gets after it. Against players like that, I think you just have to call here. I think this is probably a misstep for Chidwick. Again, I presume he plays way better than I do. But knowing what I know about Trickett and knowing that you have the jack blocker in your hand, I think this is a spot where you probably just have to pay. It sucks. Sucks that it's $1 million tournament or £1 million tournament you have to pay in this spot. But if he's not jamming 4s and 3s, then I think it's okay to call. If he is jamming 4s and 3s, now it becomes a little bit of a better fold. That said, maybe 4s and 3s just bet the turn though, right? So you can heavily discount those. Jack 7's not in there. I mean, like I said, there's really only 2 combinations of hands at the end of the day. Unless Trickett's jamming it with the ace-high flush, which I think would be very optimistic because this is a spot where both of his opponents could have easily had a full house. Whereas he does not, right? Notice here, Chidwick may open Jack 7 suited. Definitely opens Jack 7's 4s, 3s, right? Bryn Kenney has all those hands as well. So it's a pretty insane bluff from Trickett, and it got through. It is worth mentioning, maybe in this spot, Trickett made a read. Maybe he knows Bryn Kenney gets after it. Certainly he does. And maybe he also could read something into the way Chidwick called the 100K. Maybe he thought Chidwick had a whole lot of overpairs, right? If he has an overpair, he's probably going to fold to the jam. So, neat hand all around. Maybe live reads played something into this. I'm not entirely sure. But if you slotted me into that spot, I think I would have called with the Jack 8 of clubs, but I would have been sick about it. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I hope you're enjoying my Thanksgiving Day marathon. I hope you're learning a lot and having a great day. I know you just watched a little bit of the Triton £1 million review, and I'm excited to offer that to you at a very discounted price for Black Friday. In the Triton £1 million review, I review some of the most interesting hands from that tournament, which was the biggest buy-in tournament ever. And I study play from some of the best players in the world, including Tom Dwan, Jungleman, Stephen Chidwick, Bryn Kenney, Dan Smith, Bonomo, and many, many more top pros. One of the ways I have significantly improved my skills is by working hard to study the strategies of other poker players and implement the ones that are extremely successful into my own game. And learning from the best players in the world is a fantastic way to continuously improve. If you enjoy hand history reviews like this, I've reviewed many, many final tables of World Series of Poker events, World Poker Tour events, high-stakes cash game tables that I've played at and that other people have played at, and it is perhaps the absolute best way to take your skills to the next level quickly by seeing what the best players in the world do and then adding that to your game, right? It does take time, it takes a little bit of work, but I've gone through the hard work of essentially telling you why the best players in the world are doing what they are doing, and then showing you how to slip those plays right into your strategy so that you can crush like they do. So check it out at pokercoaching.com/Black Friday, and hope you continue enjoying this Thanksgiving Day marathon.